Hey y'all, it's Charla, and on this week's episode of Corn Fed, I draw my life. I'm going to illustrate everything from birth until now. Let's go!
Oh, you know you want it corn fed.
So the story goes, it was April 22nd, we'll just say 80-ish. And my mom and dad were high school sweethearts, and they got married and they settled down in a small little town called Farwell, Texas. And my mom and dad had my older brother Clay and my older sister Christy before little old me came along. And my mom asked my sister, "What should we name your little sister that's gonna be here?" And my sister said we should call her Lighty Light. And everyone thought that was funny. It's still a joke today, but that's always been a name that I've kind of tried to live up to. And then my little brother Clint came along, so there was 6 of us all together that made the whole corn crew. And people always ask me, hey, how did you even get started in singing? Well, I grew up singing at family reunions and in church, but my big debut on a big stage was in 5th grade for DARE graduation. You remember DARE to keep kids off drugs? Well, I shared the stage with about 5 or 6 other of my girlfriends, and I was kind of the one that was the biggest and the loudest on stage, but we sang Whitney Houston's I Believe the Children Are Our Future. And I had an awesome childhood. My parents were so great, and I had lots of highs, but also lots of downs when I actually lost one of my dear friends when I was a junior in high school. But while I was still in school, I went and watched my brother. He actually started going to school at South Plains College, and we would drive up there and watch him perform. And it was so crazy because he was on stage with other students and they were forming this band, and it was so cool to watch him up there performing and singing and under the lights, and students were standing behind the cameras and was broadcasting out on this TV show that was on the local stations, and it was so neat. I said, Mom and Dad, I want to do that. Whatever Clay's doing, that's where I want to be. I want to be up on that big stage under those lights. I set my sights on South Plains College, and I ended up actually getting a scholarship to South Plains College. And then I went on to Texas Tech for a year, and I also performed at the Cactus Theater up in Lubbock, and that was run by Don Caldwell. And he said, listen, Charla, you are too big for this stage. And so I packed everything up and I decided to move to Nashville. My brother had already moved up there. He was playing with some other artists like Phil Vassar and Brady Seals. So with my guitar in hand, I was ready to make it big in Music City. But soon my guitar in hand turned into an apron as I ended up waiting tables and bartending. I also ended up working for a builder, which I designed some $1 million homes. That was amazing. And I worked for this guy named Bob Haley, and he is still one of the top builders in Nashville, but he taught me so much about business. And I even did some work on CMT as an on-air personality. And I met a bunch of my best friends, all of my girlfriends. And that's the best part about living in Nashville, was all the friendships that I made. But all that music that I had set out to do up in Nashville, I wasn't doing any of it. And I thought, I didn't move to Nashville to just build houses and wait tables and just be on screen and not sing. I wanted to sing. That's what I moved up to Nashville to do. And for some reason, I had gotten far away from that. In 2006, I came down and visited my brother who was in Austin, and he took me to Zigfest in Bryan College Station, and I witnessed something I had never witnessed before. I saw the Randy Rogers Band perform on stage, and can you believe it? I had never even heard of those guys, but there was 5,000 college kids singing every word to every one of their songs out in the crowd. And they were having so much fun, and all I could think was, I want to do that. So I picked up everything in Nashville. I sold my house, I quit my job, I sold my car, and I moved back home to Texas because, hey, it was too far from Mom and Dad anyway. So I had mom and dad in Farwell, I had my sister in Midland, I had my brother in Dallas, and my brother in Austin. And so I just ended up sleeping on their couches and driving my parents' PT Cruiser, which I call her Penelope Tawanda, and I started touring the state of Texas. And finally, I was on stage again, under the spotlight, and singing in front of Kevin Fowler and Aaron Watson and so many other artists that I still need to thank today, because they would let me get up between their big sets and just play acoustic for like a couple of songs. But it got me in front of their fans and it introduced me to the whole state and the whole music scene in Texas. And then it was in 2008 and I ran into this little kid just getting started at Hills Cafe in Austin, and he was from Lubbock, so we had the Texas Tech connection, and he said, "Hey, my name's Josh Abbott and I'm cutting a record and I would love for you to come in and cut some vocals." And I ended up going into the studio and we cut Good Night for Dancing, which was I was just supposed to sing background vocals on, but he ended up turning it into a duet after he was impressed with my vocals that I did in the studio. So we turned it into a duet. It was a huge release. It made it all the way up to #1 on the Texas music charts. And so I ended up touring based out of Lubbock with Josh Abbott, and I would go around the state of Texas and even outside of the state of Texas touring with Josh Abbott and his band, singing Good Night for Dancing with him on stage and also singing some of my own stuff. But I had a show out in Mount Pleasant at the Titus County Fair, and one of my friends, Josh, brought this other guy, and his name was Brian Barrett. I was opening for Johnny Rodriguez, and he came out to watch me perform, and he was dark and handsome, and he had muscles, and he loved Merle, and did I mention he had muscles? As soon as I spotted Brian, I kind of changed my tune and I said, "That's what I want." And he graduated from Texas State, and then he got an internship up in Arlington. And so at that time, I had really become close to a station called Ranch Radio, 95.9 The Ranch out of Fort Worth, Texas. And so I emailed Kevin McCoy. Well, he emailed me back and was like, "You won't believe this. We're putting this show together. It's called Texas Music Interactive, and I think you would be the perfect host for it." That's where my career with the Ranch Radio started. I've written a ton of songs. I came out with an EP called Big T-Shirt in 2011, and then in 2013 I came out with another full record entitled Stella, and I am now on my 11th single called In My Heart. And I am so thrilled on where my career is. I get to do the radio during the week, I get to tour on the weekends, and I've been able to plant my feet in Fort Worth, Texas, where I'm so happy, and I've started a family with my husband Brian, and we're now starting a family with my baby Blake, and I could not be more happy in my whole life. And so I really feel like I'm living up to that name, Lighty Light, because every day I try and be the light in somebody's life. Well, there you go, guys. That is my whole life, all the way up until today. Coming up next week on Corn Fed, I am going to take you back into the gym and give you some cardio tips that is going to get everybody into that short shape with some interval training. Love y'all.